product design team here at DocuSign. This is awesome because this is actually the first time we've done an event like this where we're partnered with another org in this awesome space. So thank you all for coming. Super stoked to have everyone here for SF Design Week. So on that note, just a quick shout out that we actually really love to partner with design related organizations doing events like this. So if you have an event like that and you need a space, come see me or come see one of the other DocuSign employees. That there's kind of no way that you'll know who we are, but we'll identify you. We'll wave our hands. Okay, see some people in the back. Because if you are interested, I can let you know how to apply. We have limited space and time, but we are open, and this is a pretty cool space. Honestly, it's when I use that much. I mean, it's great. So I'd like to just talk for 30 seconds a little bit about what we do and design every day and for whom. So quick show of hands, has anyone ever used DocuSign before? Okay, that's everybody. Awesome. Better than I thought. I wasn't quite clear. So you might have bought your house with DocuSign. You might have signed an offer letter with DocuSign. You may have bought a car with DocuSign. Most people know us for e-signature. But it turns out that actually that's really one step in a larger process around agreements, and that's actually what our product designers work on, people on my team work on every day. And when you think about an agreement, which is what you sign, someone has to prepare that agreement, someone has to get it signed, and in many cases that means I might have to identify who you say you are, that you're actually you. And in some cases, that may mean that we also have to act on that. So we need to take that data into tools that we use, like Workday or Salesforce or anything like that, tools that your business is already using. And you have to store and search those documents and even understand what's in those agreements because they pretty much power your business. So that just gives you just a bird's eye view of the kind of problems that we're designing for every day. And the reason that I wanted to share that with you is a shameless plug. We're hiring, oh my God. And it turns out we're hiring in some pretty awesome places. You'll notice the Eiffel Tower. Designing in Paris, anyone? Okay, you guys so we are looking for senior designers to help us build what we call the DocuSign Agreement Cloud, which is what I just showed. It is a suite of products that goes beyond signature. And it's something we just announced 2 weeks ago, and we are looking for a lot of designers on our teams here in, not in San Francisco right now, we feel a lot of those, unfortunately, but Paris, Chicago, and Seattle. And actually there's a fourth hidden one here. Can anyone guess what it is? The location? Remote. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. The next thing is, this is actually event 1 of 2 for SF Design Week, because tomorrow night we have our own event here called Design Bento, and that is all about design snacks and hacks. And we're going to be talking about how techniques that we use to build products, and actually also to build our design culture here at DocuSign. So if you're interested, you can still get some tickets at sfdesignweek.org. It's tomorrow at 6, same place. It's super easy to remember, happy to forget. But we'd love to have you if you want to come back. And that's it. So please enjoy.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be in this wonderful space. The view is very distracting, but beautiful. So I guess I just wanted to say a couple of words about the organization, so IxDA SDN. This is our very first partner event. Let's have a round of applause for that. IxDA, so I think we did advertise that we're going to give an introduction from our side and our disciplines, but for the sake of time and given the quality of amount of the speakers that we have, we decided to cut that down and really just give an introduction to the organizations. So IxDA is a global organization of interaction designers. It reaches around, I think, over 100,000 people now, right, globally, worldwide. The San Francisco chapter is just 1 out of 50 chapters worldwide, but we're a pretty sizable one, so we have a community online of around 5,000 people, and on social media for another 5,000 people, so 10,000 designers total that are engaged in IxDA. If you do want to sign up yourself, there's a website, it's IxDA SF.org, You can sign up if you create an account. You're going to be signed up to our newsletter basically and get updates on events that we're running and initiatives and things. There's also a link to a survey if you want to volunteer with IxDA. So these are, we have fabulous volunteers helping with this event and with every event, and also, for example, with the redesign of our website. Right now, if you go to that website, don't be afraid. It doesn't really showcase doesn't make us shine. But we're working on that. So we have actually a team of volunteers right now. Part of it from the CCA, they're going to do it as a summer project, and a couple of other seasoned professionals, including design directors, who are going to work on our website, right? So that's one volunteer project, but we're also running initiatives that go broader than that as well. We also run, as we're planning on, social impact initiatives for designers to get engaged in. So that's another area if you guys are interested. Please get in touch in any way, sign up for an account, or just, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we have emails that you can just email us in. That's totally fine. So with that, maybe Ming, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I can talk about SDN side of things. So Service Design Network is, like IxDA, a global organization, mostly volunteer-based. They started in Europe, and there has been a lot of movement in the United States. I actually personally grew up with IxDA Chicago chapter since I was a student. So I feel in my mind, IxDA is kind of a collection of designers as practitioners, and SDN is quite focused, especially in service design. So as I grew in my career, went to the Bay Area and joined SDN. There's a few of us in the room. Polly, can everyone raise their hand? There's Polly, Erin, Gazia, Sophie, Maria's also helping out. There's quite a few folks in the room. Please find us if you're interested in learning more, and help us with the field building effort in the United States and in San Francisco. Currently we have 2 programs that are running. Erin started us in October with the climate group. So it's a series of 4 working groups. Michelle's also here. So 4 working groups centered around using service design methods towards helping climate change. So there's waste management, mobility, disaster preparedness. Climate change is a topic on a lot of people's minds, so please join us if you're interested in working on that in your spare time. And Sophie and I run a casual reading group monthly in her house, and she usually provides really good food. So please come join us if you're interested in reading something related to service design. Other than that, we will hear from the wonderful speakers.
Thank you. So Chris hardly needs an introduction, and please introduce yourself as well. But he just recently moved to Austin, right? Here we go. But he was a design director at Get Around for a long time as well, and he also wrote a book, Orchestrating Experiences, which I want to plug real quick.
I appreciate the plug. Thank you. I'm going to talk fast because we get 5 minutes. But I'm really happy to be here. I was happy to come back. I just moved away 3 weeks ago. Hated to leave the work and the team to get around, but happy to be in Austin, Texas. I'm now a principal designer at HEB Digital. You probably don't know what HEB is. It's a grocery chain in Texas. If you're in Texas, you probably know it. You might even love it. I'm focused on curbside pickup and home delivery on there, so it's very good using technology to augment a really interesting service experience. But I'm here, I'm going to try to talk about how my experience has influenced my perspective on our profession and what it means, and particularly interaction design and service design, because that's the theme of the event, and those are sort of the 2 tribes I'm really interested in. That's my jam. What you see in sort of my greatest hits of what I've done is there's kind of a theme in common. The theme in common is that they all are using technology to augment real-world physical experiences, whether that's financial services, whether that's transportation, whether it's buying your groceries, whether it's solar energy installing in your house, or whether it's connecting hosts and renters. They're all there to do that. And that is what I have found that serves me best when I am thinking about those experiences has specifically been theory to practice interaction design and service design. Because they're made up of all these moments, and what's really important about those moments is the interaction that happens, the behavior that happens between the system, and the system could be a person or it could be a digital touch point, and the customer or the user, or however you want to term that. and then thinking about how they all connect in a systems view. I almost made a mistake when I came here and socializing and talking to a bunch of people that are smarter than me, and it got me really thinking about what the problem is. So I'm kind of ad-libbing. I think I've got slides, but I'm not even sure I'm gonna go with them, but they're sort of those sort of, but I started to really boil down the problem in talking to a few people that made me think about it, and that it's sort of, in this perspective, it's really this generalist and specialist debate. You know, I've been able to teach, I've taught at California College of the Arts, I've taught at Austin Center for Design, Austin Community College, NYU, Academy of Art, and I've seen a lot of people, and some of those programs have been really about getting generalists out in the world so that they can be employed, because there's so many good jobs for designers right now, and the more versatile they are, the more likely they'll be employed. But I've also known when I go towards those experiences, the experiences that I just highlighted before, when I need to really think about this moment, this touch point that might happen with a digital touch point, it might happen with a person, it might happen with a combination, I need someone that really understands how that interaction is going to happen. And that's going theory to practice, the stuff that makes up interaction design, behavior, signifiers, affordances, feedback loops, feed forward, cognition. I need people who go really deep and know how to think critically about that. And then when I'm looking at the whole view of how these all connect together, the digital touch points with the logistics and the operations and the processes and the technology, I need people who are really strong system thinkers and understand you know, what it means to think about stocks and flows and feedback loops and what makes a really strong hierarchical and self-organizing system, and can think through what those can do. And so I don't know if I have a point or a take yet. This is sort of in thinking about the theme of this, as far as our profession being in flux, is sort of my personal struggle in understanding what the balance is. One of the pitfalls of being a generalist, or at least advocating for generalists and having programs that, 3 minutes, that's a lot of time, great, that advocates for that, is that it also puts forward that notion of like a one designer on a team, the one designer that is versatile enough to do everything, and that's a problem. One of the things you can advocate for a specialist is the idea that they need a complementary skill set, which means they have to collaborate with other designers, which is something I'm an advocate for. The people that have worked with me know that I'm an advocate for designers working with other designers. But I also understand the idea, like, we want to be employed, we want jobs, we want to be versatile so we have our skill sets. I don't really have an answer to that. What I'd like to see in interaction design programs is doubling down on actual interaction design. We think about it, I've been a part of it, and I think these are really great programs, the ones that I've been a part of. But again, I want more rigor in thinking about what makes a really good interaction, but they incorporate design thinking, they incorporate UX, and as they need to, because even if you're in an interaction design program, you want to go and graduate good UX designers and product designers. And in service design, I often struggle with like, what's the craft of service design? There's really progressive institutions that think about having undergrad and graduate service design programs. People in this room have come from those programs, and I'm an advocate for thinking forward like that. But I think, like, what's the craft, right? So a product designer is going, physical product designer is going to, make models, physical models of something that someone else might have thought of. A graphic designer is going to do a lot of production work. An interaction designer might do motion studies and really think about that. What does a 22-year-old service design graduate really then double down on? And I've seen a lot of them have to go into like interaction, not have to, but it's useful for them. But I would like to see from that program standpoint, an incorporation of interaction design, as well as if I had more time, I'd talk about information architecture as well, because it's all about information in these systems. So that might be a little bit rambly, but my main premise around thinking about what's in flux is really that debate. Maybe that's what we can continue on in our breakout conversation around that idea of being generalist and being versatile versus being really deep and knowledgeable and being the ringer in the room around a certain discipline or certain skill set. And that's what I found.
Thank you, Chris. Perfect. So we're going to go with Kristian next. Yeah, here we go. That's the element of surprise in the order of the speakers. So we're getting your slides up right now, but thrilled to introduce Kristian Simsarian, now from Collective Creativity, the founder of the IxDA program at the CCA, the Masters of IxDA. From IDEO before that, great experience that you can talk about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Well, it's great to be here. Actually, I just want to say Chris persuaded me. Like, I had a different opinion coming in. We were talking over there. I didn't realize he was hitting his slide points when we were talking over there. And then he had said the exact same thing up here. I was like, oh, he kind of really knows what he's talking about. He does, actually, and I think he's right. That I created a BFA in 2010 and then created a master's in 2015. And the BFA, I really had to figure out what the craft was of interaction design. Like, what is this discipline? And I think it's useful to say that now, is we came up with a definition that enabled us to separate, because the graphic design program said they wanted us to be part of them. The industrial design said, no, they're part of us. That's interaction isn't a separate thing. And architects also said, no, that's part of architecture. So there was this crazy thing where we had to actually define our material in order to separate. And eventually I had a definition that said that interaction design is a new human-centered discipline with deep skills in systems and behavior, both human and machine, and just enough visual design to communicate and just enough technical skills to demonstrate. Right? And the last two things were really important, that we weren't a communications design program and we weren't an engineering program, that we were focused on systems and behavior. That really helped. And then the additional thing was that I think there's a lot of things that are our material. Time is our material, behavior is our material, but as soon as I said technology is our material, then nobody else was claiming that. And we said we want to use technology as a workable material that shapes things. And I remember at the time, I won't mention names, but there's a few people who said, no, don't define us by technology. We're UX people. We think about all these touch points. And I was like, please give me 5 examples of things that don't involve technology today, right? And people say restaurants. I'm like, come on, right? The kiosks, you know, if the cash register is down, you can't even place an order these days, right? We came up with board games. And I said, well, I don't think we're going to be creating a new program with 100 graduates every year that's going to be designing board games, right? So somewhere there's technology. It might be invisible. Ideally, it's invisible. But that's a workable material. We were able to create a whole lab around that, which united the whole school around this technology workable material. Anyway, I love what Chris is saying about that focus thing. I think there's something also in there about how the discipline of design has redefined and shifted. You know, like all these traditional design disciplines are all being disrupted in some ways, and they're scurrying, which is probably why they wanted to claim interaction design, to figure out what this thing is design. Because now in the Valley and San Francisco, when you say design, it really means technology design, right? And, oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got the rest of the slide. And, you know, now, God, the industrial designers are so upset because there's product design. So Bill is the VP of product design. It's like, you know, there's what, 200,000 members of the IDSA or whatever, 200,000 members of the IDSA, maybe not even that much, because you have to pay dues. That, you know, we're like, product design, that's us! Well, no, now there's more people who think the product design is design technology. Okay, so now I'm going to whip through the slides I planned. I think there's these 3 eras that I've lived through. So I'm a design engineer. I was a scientist in the 90s, and I was doing artificial intelligence, robotics, and AI, AR, and VR. So I mixed all those together in my thesis, which was human-robot collaboration. So that was my background. Then I left it, went to IDEO, and sort of experienced this era of specification. So how many people remember the era of specification? From CD-ROMs, people were doing CD-ROM, and then we started to do webs, and we kind of continued that stuff through the web era. We're still speccing because we couldn't really work with the engineers, we couldn't get the resources, that sort of thing. And then finally, this magic happened in around 2005 or 6, is we started to get to sit next to engineers and kind of skip the specs, because which is what we wanted to do anyway. They just disappear for 6 months and come back. So everybody's going like, no more waterfall, we're going to do agile. And we got to partner. So in this era, it's like craft was our limitation, right? We had to be able to specify all these things in beautiful craft. Didn't always get implemented. And then here, collaboration. I remember there was a lot of excellent craftspeople who didn't come along because they weren't good collaborators. They got left behind. You know, and now I think we're moving into this era of where we're learning. So it's machine learning, right? Is we're teaching these machines, and then teaching is going to be our limiting skill. So we all need to become really good teachers because we're going to be setting learning goals and objectives. And in fact, that's even what it is in machine learning. It's an objective function. So we're going to be defining what the objectives are for these things. And so the 3 eras, I think that's important for our conversation. And from another talk, I was talking about the 3 roles of design. And one of them is being an oracle. Like, we're really good at predicting the future. We go out and we learn things. We're like, oh, this is what should happen. And I think there's a need for us to increase our foresight and our forecasting skills. That's something I think you're going to see. Every time I mention that, we're like, oh yeah, I'm really into forecasting right now. So looking not just 2 or 3 years out, but looking 5 years, 10 years out, because then we have to start addressing some of the really important challenges like climate, democracy, and disruptive tech. We're also in this kind of alchemy. If you remember alchemy, it was like before we had the periodic table. We do magic. We sort of put things together in this magical way that's kind of different and kind of secret and is really hard to talk about. But one of the things I think is really important is we also play this role of the jester or coyote, and every culture has this idea of the trickster. And I think sometimes when we're taking our high salaries and we have our high rent, we sort of forget our role to be responsible to culture, and we sometimes put our business suits on and we keep them on a little too long, and we forget that actually we need to be provoking a bit more. So I think that's probably the one that we really need to stoke, is like being a bit more of a coyote and trickster. I got the 0. And so I'm going to leave this, let's see, oh, this is the previous version. But I love this quote. So when Daniela said this about power and craft, this is one of my favorite quotes. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. It's from Martin Luther King. And there's a fantastic book, which I think is the best design book I've ever read, called Love and Power by Adam Kahane, which is about social change and transformation and how working with both power and love, like making sure you have the people that have power in the room and the people who are bringing love and compassion in the room, can just do amazing transformational things. So that's where I'm going to leave that.
Thank you.
Raphaelle next. I think we're going to go in the order of
I have the pleasure of introducing Raphaelle Loren, who I actually also had the pleasure of working with, most recently at Wells Fargo Bank. And it's there on our service design team. I feel it really solidified my personal practice as a service designer, and realizing that service design has the power of turning insights about people's attitudes and behaviors into something, a good force within capitalism that can really transform it towards more human-centeredness. So let's hear from her.
Hi. Oh, this is a better view. Let's see, how does this thing work? Did I use this?
I hope so.
There we go. Okay, so actually, I'm really glad Chris went first, because I was hoping he would, and I might actually be able to reference what he was going to talk about, so this was great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of, maybe from more of a personal standpoint, like what service design is, how I got to it, and what it really means to me, and mainly, as we said, well, I just left Fargo, so now I can't say as we say.
Both of us did.
Yes, exactly. Keep me honest here, right? Service design for me really is about being a set of tools to craft winning experiences. And what I mean by that, like a winning experience really is about, creating, like really the craft of creating the brand promise, delivering the brand promise. And it's not a craft as in like, it's not material. And I think that's where, it's a little bit different from more traditional disciplines. But that's part of what attracted me to it, actually. And it sounds all good, but the question is, of course, like, how do you do that? So I'll go really briefly explaining a little bit about like how I've come to that and what really why it resonated with me so much. So I started my career actually in marketing strategy, and so the main question that I was asking myself at the time was like, how do we communicate with our customers about our products and services with the right message at the right time on the right channel? And this, after a while, felt a little bit like, well, I don't really want to work just on the message. I kind of want to work on the product or service itself, because if I do that, then the message is much simpler because I understand the needs and I can fill that. So that's where I started learning more about mostly digital products at the time, and really like digging into like design thinking and user-centered design. And as I have a social sciences background, it all kind of still made sense. And then after that, I started thinking, well, to be able to really realize those products and services into experiences that are really powerful and winning, then we need to be able to orchestrate the organization return. And I kind of fell into service design that way, and I was like, well, that's cool, because I've been using, personas and journey maps and the day in the life and all of these tools in my toolkit. But when I learned about the blueprint, I was like, okay, that's awesome, because now suddenly we bring together the view of the external facing things and then the internal and how it all orchestrates, and that all makes sense to me. So yeah. So just a few examples of some work I've done. So this was actually the med school at UCSF. This was a company that I helped, it was a startup, helped sort of redefine the offering, the brand, the experience. And so there's an aspect of physical and an aspect of course, mostly digital. And then like the first precision medicine app at UCSF. And so what's common in all of these things, actually, and then there's some Wells Fargo stuff that I can't show it, so that's not here. So in this case, why am I showing you these examples? And I could show you a whole bunch of others. All of us could show you other examples. I think what's really interesting to me is that service design and it was useful, and the tools we just mentioned were definitely necessary, but they were not sufficient. And I think really what makes the difference is alignment. And alignment can mean many things. It can really be about how you align the brand promise to the experience. It can be about how you align product and marketing, maybe even within marketing, how you align the brand promise and performance, for instance. But I think that's really where you can have the power of service design shine, is really using, for instance, the blueprint in making tangible this set of ideas or solutions that you've come up with into a way that's going to be, that are intangible, and then making that much more tangible. People that really literally go into maps and touch them, play with them, and post it on them. So I see really this value in capturing shared knowledge and understanding around the organization and the different teams, helping align people that come from different disciplines and with different incentives into seeing things from one singular view and co-creating that shared vision for the future. And then sometimes in some companies I know it's done, definitely not at Wells Fargo, other places, yes. Putting up a blueprint that's been worked on can really be a very powerful, essentially leave behind, a reminder of commitments that the teams have made. So it plays a role in all of that. So I hope, so far, most of you, I see a lot of nodding, so I'm glad everyone's somewhat agreeing. But I think what I wanted to bring up tonight, really my point was around, I feel like this is really when you can master these tools and use these tools and perhaps other tools as well, you really have this unique power in a way. I feel like they're very powerful, and they're creating new products and services into the world is sort of a privilege and is a powerful thing. And you're creating change movements. And I feel like at the same time as you have this privilege and this power, you also have this responsibility. And I'm glad this has come up actually multiple times already. About really this notion that we can use these tools in many different ways. So I want to invite you, and I only have 1 minute left, so perhaps we can continue the conversation in the breakout, but I really kind of want to invite all of you to think about this power and how you can bring into your design practice sets of checks and balances, how you can bring in questions. So for instance, if you ask the question who am I designing for, you should also perhaps be asking yourself who am I leaving behind, or who am I not designing for, and what impact does that have? Every designer says, I'm seeking impact, right? So what does that mean? And then does impact mean something broader? And to bring it sort of to a more practical level, what if we could add sort of an overlay on the blueprint around externalities, for example? And so these are the questions I'm asking myself today. I don't have answers. I'm hoping some people have thought about that smarter than me, perhaps. So please join me later if some of these things are interesting to you. So thank you.
So next speaker up is Gretchen Anderson, who I'd like to introduce real quick. So she has she runs her own design consultancy now called Primary Angle, but she has design consultancy background experience in frog design, Cooper, Luna, right? But next to that, she also helps positions at head of design, for example, the PG+E, and head of product for greatschools.org, which is just an amazing kind of break, from the typical design career. So looking forward.
Thank you, Daniela. Thanks for having us all here. Yeah, so just to recap, I liked how Kristian called out the specifications. So I started my career as an individual contributor in consulting and cranking out spec after spec. And in organic, we didn't care how you did it. It was like the early days of the internet, just if you make the thing, you got points. Then I went to Cooper, where there was a lot of very meticulous thinking about how you did the thing. And then I went to Frog, where there was absolutely no thinking about how you did the thing, but you could definitely do it wrong. There's a lot of processed food. The next year of my career, when I went to Loren, was as a design director, where I had to think about how do I actually get a bunch of people to do stuff in some semblance of an organized way. How do I make it scale? How do I make it repeatable? And then when I went to go work in-house at great schools as the head of product, which, by the way, I was like, literally never done this job before. I can't believe we're gonna make me the VP of product. But okay, I'm the most qualified person here. So, I kind of stumbled into that and had to think about how does the business run, and this is a nonprofit, which, interestingly, when you talk about impact, nonprofits actually have to report and measure impact in a way that profit-driven companies do not, which is interesting. And then at PG+E doing that at a much greater scale, which is what led me to realize I kind of want to do this on my own because I have a little more leverage and a little more clout, and I'm now thinking about how do I do this in a way to help more people do it for other people rather than doing it within one house. And I wrote this book, my book just came out in March, called Mastering Collaboration, because that is the skill that I see that designers actually do have in more abundance than other people we work with. And I'm not saying we know it all, but kind of like nothing happens if we don't collaborate, right? Like an engineer can ship something and it's designed, and we've all seen those. But my design doesn't go anywhere if I don't enlist people on my side. So that's sort of my career in a nutshell. And I think as putting together this panel, thinking about the future, and I feel like a lot of the fear that I hear, I also teach at CCA, we're joking that many of us have taught at CCA, we did not plan this, I don't think, but I think there's some fear about automation. A lot of us probably face that fear for our users. I know in the work I've done, we're always thinking about if I displace a person with this machine or this process getting automated, what happens to them? But maybe there's some worry about this for ourselves. I think some people worry about that. I don't, because automation has always been here, and I put up Wix as an example. I recently was making my own website because I have my own business now, and I could who am not at all technical, in literally half an hour, Wix, if you're here on your endorsement, I could make a reasonably professional looking website in a way that I would have had to hire 3 of you before to do that. And that's a type of automation that benefits me. But guess what? That is hella designed. It's just a different kind of design. It's not making my website, it's making the primitives that I use to make my website, which in fact the systems thinking thing, I think is really the superpower that we all have to bring forward. By the same token, you have Netflix. The automation Netflix, if you think about it, they bring you the movies all the time, but if you read it, they have A/B tested the hell out of them, made 50 million different permutations of all of the art. Because what makes you watch a show in Germany is different than what makes you watch it in New York. And so there's, again, automation there, but there are still people behind that automation. The other example is Uber. If you think about what Uber did, they just automated the worst parts of taxis. And I'm not a big Uber fan, but they just got rid of the awkward credit card part and the awkward where is the cab part. There's still plenty of people involved. It's just not the dispatch anymore. The dispatch got automated. So I don't really fear the automation fully. The real boogeyman is getting so entrenched in our own dogmatic fights on Twitter and our tool sets and our tools that we lose sight of what our real gift is, which is we're the human-centered people. We're the voice of the customer. We're the people who can be the check and balance against the business wishful thinking, against the overly profit margin motivated behaviors, which we know play out in really awkward ways, right? So we can say, are you ready for the PR gap that happens when you do this thing? Are you ready for the blowback that happens? Have you designed for ill intent? Have you designed for abuse cases? We all know about use cases. Have you thought about when I worked at great schools, somebody came in and hijacked our platform one day, little old nonprofit us, we have to think about those use cases. So my argument is the future of us is to retain our human-centeredness and to use that as a superpower that can't be automated. But it's very important in the automation of things, bringing those people into the process and helping people, groups of people communicate and collaborate to make the right thing. This is an anecdote. I had a client in Dynamo. Do you guys ever remember the embosser printers? You guys are too young, but those people will remember there were these things, big plastic things. You would crank this circle around and you would press the button and it would make embossed stickers. They went on to make very fancy printers, many of which are in your offices. And I remember being at this meeting with them, and they would bring the printer to the meeting, stick it on the table. It was very cute. And they would talk about this printer. And I was like, God damn it, no one cares about the printer. They care about the label. And my client looked at me and was like, oh my God, you're a genius. And I was like, am I now? Just channeling the people in their ad agency the next day. They told this to their ad agency. They came back and they were like, here's the ad campaign. So it's just to say, like, the thing that you might take for granted is mind-blowing to the people who are just thinking about the thing they made or the P&L or whatever. Don't be intimidated by the math. I've worked on surgical robotics. I won't go into it now, but like, those brilliant people that made the Aura surgical robotics thing that just came out used me as a designer because I was someone who could check them to say, can you really automate that? Is that the right thing to do? Is that what people want? And by asking those questions, I can make a difference. So I'm going to leave you with this quote by my good friend Sarah Corey, who works at Google Hire. And she, again, is automating the hiring process, and she really comes down to our methods, our focus about users is what will make us succeed in the future. And I truly believe that, and I hope you all do too.
I would actually need you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Let me guess, you can't pronounce my name. I'm going to go ahead and put the timer on. My name is Narges. You probably won't need to use my last name because there's not very many of me. Okay, so quick little visual history. I am grounded in a craft. I believe that it is very important to be a service designer who is grounded in a craft. In this case, the craft is graphic design, which I did for 15 years. I got into it accidentally, deepened my relationship over time, eventually went to CCA, got my BFA, kept working, and then I took a big kind of left turn and joined it at the top in 2013. So I was a very senior creative in my discipline. I found myself in a whole new world, which was very surprising to me in a lot of ways. But I did get to work with Maria and Chris, among other wonderful people, and I got to learn a bunch of new skills that I layered on top of my existing depth in my craft. And the thing that I learned that was most exciting to me actually was research, and I had the opportunity to learn from Maria, among other people, on that. So after about a year of doing basically mostly service design projects as part of the Adaptive Path Consultancy, we were acquired by Capital One, and we became the service design team at Capital One. So I did that for a while. Started teaching at CCA because I loved my experience there and in the community. And Amber Reed and I, who was another graphic designer turned service designer at Adaptive Path, came up with a service design elective, which we taught to primarily graphic design students at first. And shout out to Treat and Daniel, who are former students of mine from CCA. So I took some time off after leaving Capital One, and I did a pretty exciting pro bono project that I'm going to share a little bit with you. And then in January, I took my first public sector job. I now work for the City and County of San Francisco. I am the service designer for the Permit Center. So I'm part of digital services, which is a thing that exists now in the city. And so I'm going to keep going. I'm actually going to skip over this Capital One stuff, even though I'm very proud of it. I was thinking about the prompts that we were given, power, purpose, and craft. And so I tried to identify the craft. It's very hard in service design work. This actually was not service design, it was kind of meta. we're basically running a little education publishing studio in-house. This is a project I spent about 4 months on last summer with Glide. It started out as really a service design project, creating the service of providing safe injection somewhere within Glide. And we realized, oh, they don't actually intend to have this be a functioning thing. It was a demonstration that was up for a week, so it wound up being more of a museum exhibit. But we did the service design, and we also did the tangible design to make this real, because they were trying to change hearts and minds on this issue, and they found that all the people who went up to Vancouver to visit the actual safe injection site that was open there came back really supporting the idea, and they couldn't fly everyone to Vancouver, so they're like, well, next best thing, let's build the service life-size inside of Glide. So that, I love this project because that's what it looks like when you're walking around with the mayor, by the way. So these are the crafts that we exercised in that. It was a very small team. This project was really an eye-opener for me because it brought together the tangibility, the making, the service to the community, and the service design, which is something that kind of indirectly led me into my next job. So I'm working on this project that is extremely tangible. There's a building going up right now. It will physically house a bunch of city departments who will be co-located, some for the first time. And those interactions need to be designed. There's a lot of decisions about the space that people are now looking like, you're the service, like, what do people need here? And so sometimes I'm like, well, I have to go ask some people, but sometimes you're like, you have to decide right now. I'm like, oh, okay. The word tangible has come up a lot, and it's an important value for me. This is just some furniture that we pulled together that happened to be about the right size to simulate something in the new space. It's some cardboard that I tore up like very quickly on the fly to simulate something that we were trying to make a decision on for the staff. We helped give a group of people who will be working in the new space an increased level of comfort and confidence in their environment by just using these life-sized, if shabby materials. So I'm not going to talk about permitting in San Francisco. If you know, you know. If you don't, treasure your innocence. I am doing service design 101 in this job. I am doing research. I am doing service blueprints. I am making experience maps. It is a heavily siloed thing that almost no one really has visibility into from the experience perspective. And so I have the great privilege and power to be one of the people who goes out and finds that information and puts it together in a way where the leaders of San Francisco can actually do something about it. And that is a service blueprint of one particular permitting experience. We printed it out on a plotter. It is 12 feet long, reduced in scale. Thank you. And we put it up on the wall in a room full of directors of departments to kind of make a point about the end product. Those are my colleagues actually not posing, they were just doing the chin stripping, looking at their first experience map. So service design basic tools, but in a space of huge opportunity and an opportunity to be of service. So the things that I've learned in my practice, thinking about craft, the methods are not applied to things, they're applied to systems and organizations. The medium really is the organization, not any of the artifacts that I make. I have influence at best, I don't have control, which can be very frustrating for a maker and a control freak. Graphic designers are all control freaks, by the way. I also have the luxury and privilege of being fairly technology agnostic. I work with people who are deep in the weeds on technology, and I'm able to bring them some perspective outside of the touch point level. And the service experience is really the deliverable. So listen to people, tell their stories. This is community organizing 101. This is the stuff that I learned in my community-based projects, and these happen to be best practices for service design as well. So my future state, coming from the traditional design world, I really think that service design and traditional design have so much to offer each other. It is largely untapped potential right now. Anyway.
And our final speaker is Maria Cordell. Thank you so much, Maria. Come on. So we are actually wanted to highlight that Maria is the one who built up IxDA San Francisco to the size it is today. So she was one of the leaders of IxDA San Francisco for the last few years. And I also neglected to mention Anna. I pointed you out, but I didn't actually mention you. This is Anna Jacob. She's also one of the leaders of IxDA San Francisco. So you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll talk about it a little bit in my slides too, but I'm an interaction designer, and I have had the pleasure of working with Ron and Chris in the past.
We love you.
And many other great people and wonderful places. I'm really impressed by what everybody has said so far. I hope you've all been taking really good notes because there have been some really amazing points and shared some really good things. So I hope to do it justice. And I'm going to take a little bit of a personal story approach to this and go back in time a little bit to reflect a little bit on where we are today. So by way of introduction, this is my badge from San Francisco Science Hack Day a few years ago. So they gave us blank cards that we wrote our names on, with a very fat marker. And then we had lots of pre-printed tags that we can put on it to describe ourselves, primarily for the purpose of being able to collaborate with other people who are at the hackathon, scientists, and mostly scientists, developers, very few designers. So by the way, a plug for Science Hack Day. It's an awesome event, and they always want designers, so please sign up. It is so much fun. But I think what you'll see here is that I have a lot of diversity, I guess you could say, in my background. My origin is in hardware design and physics, and but UX has a nice spot in the middle, so that's a really important thing. I think just by way of proving I'm a designer, a picture of a room full of stuff. So this is one of our project rooms, and this is the way I like to work. I really like to externalize absolutely everything where I can. So this was a project to understand, how people understand finances and financial health and their well-being and that kind of thing. So we had just finished a bunch of research, and so all the artifacts are just all over the walls on here. So a lot of the work is really about creating meaning, understanding, helping other people understand what's going on, developing frameworks that people can use to make sense of things, and devising models that guide not only the design work that you do, but also that an organization understands or uses to understand what's going on and what needs to happen. And I have there's no line as far as I'm concerned in terms of artifacts. I mean, I'm just as happy to use a blueprint or any other artifacts to communicate or to capture what needs to be done. So those things are widely used. Sort of at the end, so a lot of that is very specific kind of work where we're driving design and we're thinking about very specific kinds of interactions. I have also done a lot of work in computational interactions. So basically taking a space and making it interactive or responsive to what people are doing in a room, using all different kinds of cameras and things. This is a physics simulation of fluids and smoke and that sort of thing that respond to play. So it's really an interesting way to think about the architecture of responsive spaces. And I think this is interesting because you're doing design for something that you don't quite know what a person is going to do or how they're going to interact with it, so you have to be flexible. And the inputs are not necessarily clear. So it's a very different way of thinking about design, and also a lot of fun. And down here at the bottom, an example of one particular implementation of that, which just had a standalone screen with people on both sides. And that's in fact what you see here. It's a child and seeing his father on the other side of the screen and interacting. So tomorrow I am headed to Atlanta to talk at their 10-year anniversary party. I co-founded IxDA Atlanta. And I'm going back for the party, of course. And that got me to thinking about, well, what was it like 10 years ago? And in fact, Chris was there because we both lived in Atlanta at the time. So when we were thinking about founding IxDA Atlanta, we met at a cafe and we were just tossing ideas around. This is the thing we want to do. And I think part of the reason that we weren't really sure, even though the IxDA organization had already been around for a few years, at the time we were really thinking of ourselves primarily as information architects. It wasn't a good name for this kind of thing that we did. And it was the label for people who do the kinds of things that we do today, for the most part. And this, by the way, is something I still very strongly practice, and I think is a critical part of how you think about problem solving and making sense in the world. At some point, UX became a more common thing, and then we sort of changed the label to UX architect, because it seemed more relevant, I think. And maybe architect was a little too esoteric, so then we went with designer, and that's still pretty common, so that's good. And then interaction designer, too, came into the mix. But around 2009, 2008, 2009, there was definitely a existential crisis happening. And at different conferences that I attended, people were really questioning, what are we, what do we do, how do we make sense of what we do to other people, how do we get a seat at the table, all those kinds of things. And I urge you to go back in time and look at Jesse James Garrett's plenary from the IA Summit. There's a tiny link down here, but you can just search JJG IA Summit 2009 and you'll find it. It's on his website, jjg.net. But, so he was responding to all of the sort of soul searching that people were doing and claiming that, there aren't really information architects, no interaction designers. There have only ever been user experience designers. And you have to read the whole thing to see how he gets there. But the point he was really making with all of this is that there was no sense in really being so separate about it. There was a lot of separation at that time in the disciplines and how the organizations were working. And I think it's a little bit of a parallel between the IxDA and maybe Service Design Network. There's a lot of value in working together, as we are today for this meeting, and elevating completely the entire design practice. And there is no reason to have a separation. Sure, there are different aspects of the disciplines that are specific to what they do and the kinds of things that they focus on. But we need to work together. And looking at the very recent past, this is John Maeda, I think someone else mentioned this jack of all trades, or as he puts it, Jill of all trades. I think this is an interesting thing that really speaks to what we've seen in many cases described as T-shaped designers or X-shaped designers, where it's really important, I think, and what I see in the industry at large, is that you can't always be a specialist. You need to have, and it's fine to be deep in a particular area, but you need to have breadth as well to be successful. And then more recently, and I think this is a really interesting idea that resonated with me, is the idea of a computational designer. As he puts it, from his perspective, it's the most valuable kind of design right now. And so, what does it mean to be a computational designer? Well, he defines it as someone who is a humanist technologist, someone who can do critical thinking about technology. And if you think about the way that many things are going today, with machine learning and AI and so forth, you really have to be conversant in all of this technology to be able to do design well. So it's interesting to me to think that I started in IA, and I currently work in AI. So it's just a little funny. But the interesting is not just a convenient mirror image in a way, but it really means to me that everything that I did in this world still applies completely in this world. is still about understanding the human need, understanding what the business is trying to accomplish, and understanding what the technology can do and how you guide it. We're in a place now where we can't, I know I'm way past time, almost done. We can't always design everything the system should do, nor can we always predict what people are likely to do in the system, or will try to do. So the best we can do is try to enable the model to anticipate those things and to be flexible. And if you think about sensors and many other different kinds of inputs that might be part of the equation in what you're trying to do, it really becomes much more complex. So to finish, I think we're at a cycle, or really what's happening in the industry or the practice is that in many cases we have expanded in the past and we've diverged. And we've gone one way with interaction design, another way with service design. And then there are times when we have to condense and we have to come back together. And I think we might be at one of those kinds of points now. And what's really exciting about that, obviously, is that then you can remix and do all those things, and some new exciting things will happen from it, and then it will just repeat, and maybe it'll happen faster. That's it. Thank you.
That's a fantastic segue into our workshop piece, into the breakout groups. We should have just called the whole event like the remix, right? Of all the design disciplines. So meeting the minds is not too bad too, but yeah, really great segue. So we just want to give you a 5-minute spiel about what the breakout is going to be about, and we're also going to go into the history of it, like how it actually, the brain spark that caused it all to come together. And Megan was going to talk about it.
Yeah, I can talk about the impetus and the inspiration for the next portion. So thanks to the panelists for sharing what I felt was a history lesson on what led us here, which is wonderful. So we're kind of again at that point of thinking about where are the design professions going. And this conversation started in Seattle in February during Interaction 19. So 3 groups of people got together, Cumulus, there are people, Association for Design Educators, and then there's SDN and IxDA, and we had a workshop about what is the future of education in design, and what is the future of design itself, and service design, and all these terms that are floating around. Where are we going in this new era of machine and humans having to work together? So that's what led us here. So a couple questions that we wanted to make sure were covered, and hopefully maybe bring back to that original group are what do you want to be known for? Right? What would you like to contribute to the world using the craft that you have in hand and build upon that? Not just what is being asked of us. I think often we think about design briefs, we think about the problems that come to us, but also as we're building out the field, here in San Francisco and worldwide, the question often comes from employers or other places, or people that are trying to define the field is what do designers do? How do we explain our profession, our craft, as a collective whole to others? That's some of the questions that came up out of the Seattle workshop that we hope to everyone keep in mind, so we can also bring it back to a larger global conversation.
Perfect, thank you. And it really is sort of like mirroring that fragmentation, right, that Maria just mentioned about like us splintering into like all of these variety of disciplines, right, and different titles and different, education models and all of that. And so this is sort of like, start of our local discussion here in San Francisco, and then we're continuing that broader global discussion around what we want to be known for. We kind of try to provide a framework for this, for the breakout sessions, and I'm going to try and run you through that real quick. We're basically going to do 2 parts in the breakout. The first part is going to be the first 15 minutes around the current state of design, right? So where are we currently at? What are we currently doing? What are we known for today, right? And then the second part, another 15 minutes, is going to be around what do we think the future holds, right? So like we're looking into, 5 years into the future, 10 years if you want to. We also came up with a framework of 3 kind of dimensions that we thought sort of were interesting to discuss. These are just guidelines or starter ideas, right? But just to give you that kind of guidance. And that we summarize it as purpose, power, and craft. And purpose is basically, what is our purpose as designers, right, for the places where we work, right? So why do they hire us? What's the value that we can bring, right, from the various disciplines that we come from? power is maybe misleadingly quoted, but it's not about sort of like having more power, right? It's about what is our power in these organizations. It's about that proverbial seat at the table, right? Do we have a seat at the table? What table is it? Is there a table anyway, right? All these questions, right? around power. And also kind of scope of influence, right? So like, what are you actually touching upon? Is sort of strategic business model side, or you want sort of like, the drop down, UI mechanism, whatever, that kind of scope of influences as well. And then the final one is craft. And that's really sort of like, what are the tools that you bring, right, to doing your job, right? What is the processes, right? What's the role that research plays, for example? That's another nice one on the side. Do you use journey maps, or do you use mental models, or do you use whatever, wireframes, right? So really getting into sort of like the nitty-gritty of your craft and how that might be different across all of our fragmentation right now, and where that might then lead to in the future. So, any questions on that? Great. All of the breakout rooms have 2 facilitators, as I said before, one of the speakers, one of us. We have instructions in the room as well that sort of summarize what I just said as well. And we're gonna do 15 minutes on each. We're gonna do 15 minutes on current state, 15 minutes on future state. We're gonna take about 5+ minutes to prepare the report out for each group, and then we're going to reconvene here, and every group is going to present the results of the discussion. Sound good? All excited? Great. So we're going to have 10 people per room, I think, roughly. So just, fill up the room. If there's more than 10 people, look for another room. And yeah, shall we point out the areas? Yes, do you want to?
Sure. So they're a little bit all over the place, but there's one kind of here by the windows. There's another one in this kind of fun secret room over here, another by the front door, and then 3 rooms in the back. There are group numbers. Don't pay too much attention. I'd say just look for
Mike? Okay, no mic? Yeah.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Am I speaking?
Do you want to do it?
Sure. Should I start from the beginning?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. There's 6 different breakout group areas. As Daniela said, one of our speakers will be in each one, as well as one of us to help facilitate. One group is here by this window. You'll see these little posters everywhere with the purpose, power, craft. There's just kind of questions to spark discussion. We've also got a room right over here, if you kind of turn over this corner, this fun secret room over by the front door where y'all came in, and then 3 doors in the back where these different meeting rooms that Adam is nicely gesturing to back there. Yeah, 5 minutes to kind of break out. You guys, hopefully we can all get into roughly groups of 10 and follow your hearts. Go to a group where you feel like you're going to have a good discussion. Yay!